WRRC seminar this semester. I'll be the host of this series, and I think we have a great program for you. This semester we are honoring Dr. Steve Lau and John Menck, the late John Menck, for their great contribution to hydrology. So please keep it in mind, and basically they set the tone for this seminar, or the seminar series. What I'd like to do is learn the state of the art and what much we know about island hydrology, and that includes everything like climate, like surface water, groundwater. Basically, not only know about the state of the art and how much we know, but like to also to address questions that we like to know in the future. And I'd like to kick off today with three speakers, and they are from agencies. The first speaker will be Gary Gill, and he's the Deputy Director with the Department of Health for the Environment. He was in the City Council for 2 terms, and I guess was the chairman. And before that, he was the Director of the Office of Environmental Quality Control, and also the Department of Health and Environmental Integrity during the Cayetano administration. And between both appointments, he worked within non-profit organizations that includes Sierra Club, Cocoa, Kalihi Valley, and the Blue Planet Foundation. And actually, he rides his bike. I understand.
Today I carpool. To do Roy a favor, otherwise he'd be driving by himself.
The second speaker would be Roy Hardy. And Roy graduated from Conan. He got his bachelor in civil engineering from Santa Clara University, and his master's in water resource engineering from the university here, UH. And he has a license as PE professional engineer in Hawaii. He's been working with the commission since 1987, but since the commission was formed. Last but not least is Conan Oyama. And he works with the Board of Water Supply as a branch head of the Hydrology-Geology branch. And he got his undergraduate degree in geology and his master's in public administration. And now he's also a graduate student at the University of Hawaii at the Natural Resource Environmental Management Department. So without further delay, I guess each speaker will have 15 minutes, maybe 5 minutes questions, and I'll ask maybe more than 2 minutes left. So we'll start with Gary, then Roy, and finally.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Again, I'm Gary Gill. I'm the Deputy Director for Environmental Health in the State Department of Health, and I'm just going to give you try to give you a quick overview of the many things that we do relating to water and how we regulate it in the Department of Health. I don't have a fancy slideshow and bar graphs and things like that. I hope that we can get into more discussion if you have questions about what we do or how it relates to your specific interest or area of study. And I'm counting on you to yank me in like 10 minutes because, as the doctor said, I am a politician in recovery, and 15 minutes could go, 15 hours if you let me. First, what I'd like to just tell people initially, I typically do this, I apologize if you've heard it, but people really get confused about what the Department of Health does, so I want to tell you just really quickly the broad range of things that we do in the Environmental Health Administration. So it ranges everything from food safety and restaurant inspectors to hazardous spill response, Superfund cleanups, the state laboratory, and the wide range of EPA delegated pollution prevention programs in the state. So that's air, land, and water. So we have a clean air program, we have solid and hazardous waste program, and because water is so important, we have 3 water programs. We have drinking water, wastewater, and our clean water program. I call that water in, water out, and water all around. Okay? So we have 3 programs that we regulate Anyone who disposes of anything into the environment typically needs to get a permit from the Department of Health and the entire regimen of enforcement and monitoring that goes with that. So I wanted to kind of knock down those 3 programs real quickly just to give some of the things that we're doing, some of the challenges that we face in those programs, just so you can get a picture of the kind of work that we do, and if you're looking for a career in environmental protection relating to water, I got 3 programs waiting to hire you. So for drinking water, I just wanted to illustrate this is where science and policy come together. We actually hire the University of Hawaii to do some source water assessment program work, doing groundwater modeling and a risk analysis for what we need to look at to protect the groundwater from any pollution put on source. And I don't need to remind anybody in this room that we are still living with the legacy pollutants from agricultural industry, for example, in our drinking water that have been banned for more than 20 years, and we're still finding them. So this is of critical importance to the public health and the environment, that we look very carefully at what's going on in the land to protect what goes ultimately into the groundwater and potentially into our drinking water. It's a lot easier if you don't put it in, and you don't have to spend a lot of money taking it out before it gets to your house. So this is a lot of work goes into this, and in addition to more specific studies like this, the Department of Health is engaged in, the Water Commission is happy to celebrate the fact that after more than 20-something years, we're actually going to be updating our water quality master plan, which is part of the what's required under the state water code. We have person on staff to focus on that finally, and we hope to have that plan out. We're coordinating the work plan for that right now, but we would hope to have that draft by summer of this coming year. Regarding water, I just wanted to share a couple little challenges that we have to kind of put in perspective. You may have been reading in the newspaper this challenge with water catchment systems, in particular the Veterans Administration deciding not to give loans to homeowners on the Big Island who are subject to catchment systems. We don't regulate catchment systems. We regulate any drinking water system with a service connection of 15 people, or it serves a population of 25. So if you have a rain catchment system on your house and you're filling up a water tank, we don't regulate it. So we don't call it potable. We don't call it safe because we don't test it. The VA, you might have been reading, it's been in the paper, they're saying, oh, our federal regulations require that we can only give a loan to a house that has drinking water. So we've been spending the better part of a year trying to work out with VA how to accommodate their national rules for loans to veterans with the fact that catchment water off of your roof catching the rain is not regulated. So we've come up with I'll call it a screening test, the first level screening test that we can recommend to them. They want to test the water, and so we're coming up with recommendations to them on what they can simply test for, at least as a screening level, that will accommodate their federal rules. So those are kind of practical issues that we deal with. Another example is what we're dealing with in Princeville right now in Kauai. We got PCBs in a water tank, in a water reservoir. You can imagine the kind of concern that would come from a community that discovers that they have hazardous waste in the water tank that's serving their community. So we're working very closely with the Princeville utility, the regulated utility. This is one that we do require testing from that, and that's moving along a very expensive fix to a historic problem. The source of the PCBs, we think, is the caulking that was used in the 70s. And if you know about PCBs, it's like keeps the caulking soft, right? Which is what you want, and it lasts forever, which is what you want. And then until somebody says it's hazardous waste, and then you don't want it in your drinking water. And now we're playing 30 years later catch up to fix that. So that's just an example of the kind of things that we do with drinking water. I have to whip along here with the time allowed. Regarding wastewater, I will share with you what I'm very fond of saying, which there really is no such thing as wastewater. There's no such thing as wastewater. There's water, which is a resource that we are now wasting. Okay? So we don't want to waste it. We want to use all the precious water we have very cautiously, conserve it as much as we can, and reuse it to the extent that we can. And for that, what we have done in the Department of Health is put as the highest priority in the monies that we give, that EPA gives us, and that we match with state money, and then we make available at low interest rates to the counties. If you're going to do a wastewater reuse program, you'll get the highest priority in our affordable funding. So we're making that as a high priority to coordinate with the counties and encourage them to reuse for irrigation purposes what we are otherwise injecting into the groundwater or piping out into the ocean. We're also updating our reuse guidelines. So this will determine, pursuant to our guidelines, what kind of quality of water is allowed to be reused in different circumstances, either for irrigation or agriculture. So we're trying to find that balance, protecting the public health, and still finding a market to reuse wastewater and reclaim it and protect good, clean, potable water. And this will be continually a challenge as more and more information in the science develops about the impacts of pharmaceuticals, for example, or endocrine disruptors, and things that we're now measuring in parts per million, billion, or trillion. We might have to go even lower than that as science develops. So we have to be careful about what we're putting back on the land, which we have previously flushed down through our houses into the wastewater system. Boy, I could go on, and I'm sure I'm running out of time. Let me talk, a lot of this, challenges come up regarding cesspools and septic tanks in terms of their potential impact into both our groundwater and our nearshore waters. So that's something that we're struggling with as well now. And I want to talk about Lahaina, but it'll go on forever. Maybe I'll leave that for questions. And then really quickly, just to...
Still have 5 minutes. Still have about 5 minutes.
I have 5 minutes? Okay. Oh, boy, I'm talking fast. Okay, so regarding clean water. Okay, so this is our program that deals with environmental water. So streams, oceans, embayments, polluted runoff. If you ask me, but you haven't, but let's imagine you asked me, what is the biggest water problem that we have? I think in many ways we have a regulation pretty tight on a lot of our water issues. Not to say it's easy, not to say we don't have challenges, but the law really is strong in terms of protecting drinking water. You got to do all kinds of testing, you got to do all kinds of cleaning, you got to meet all kinds of standards, you got to be, so those people who are providing, or the utilities that are providing drinking water are very highly regulated. Even wastewater, NPDES permits, outfalls, the standards get stricter over time, but the regulations are pretty much in place. Where we have the biggest problem, I think, in terms of water quality in Hawaii, and the most progress that is yet for us to make, is in polluted runoff. So when it rains, the water turns brown, and we put out a brown water notification saying, the water's brown, guess what? It's probably a good idea to stay out of it. Why is the water brown? And how do you stop the water from getting brown? And that's where we have a lot of work to do as a society, beyond just regulations, but in how we design our urban environment and how we live as a people more lightly on the planet Earth. For generations, it was, there weren't wetlands, there were swamps. Swamps bred mosquitoes and disease. And the progressive thing to do was drain them and build a concrete ditch and get all the water off the land and into the ocean as fast as possible. Well, we're trying to unbuild that paradigm. And it's going to take a generation of work to do that. With smart development, low impact development, vegetated swales, retention basins, all the smart ways of accommodating the human impact on land. We have to undo generations of work and redo it in a way that's smart. So that's a long process ahead. We have tools to do that through our stormwater permits. We have tools to do that through county stormwater regulations that each of the counties are looking at. We have some resources, some financial resources in these grant monies or low-interest loan monies that we receive through the federal government and out to the counties and the communities. So we have the tools in place. We need to focus and exercise those tools in unison to get progress over time. And we're focusing watershed by watershed to try and make progress. Even though this is a small state with a small landmass, we have about 300 streams, 300 different watersheds to manage. And I always get a kick out of the state of Maryland because everybody likes to say how great they are at different things. They got one river, okay? And it splits in two. And they got their TMDLs and all that stuff done, right? I did one TMDL too, but I'm nowhere near done. So, that to me is like the generational, aspirational thing that we need to focus on. The last thing I'll talk to you about when it comes to water quality is 3 letters, GMO. There's lots of reasons, lots of things to talk about GMO, but when it boils down to it, from a public health perspective, people are concerned about pesticide contamination in their air, land, or water. And as I said, we got a lot of data about drinking water. We have a lot less data about groundwater or nearshore water pesticide contamination. We have historical problems, as we said, with sugar. Atrazine, it's like the new thing to be concerned about. Well, atrazine was used very heavily by the sugar plantations, and it's found in our groundwater statewide, mostly on the Big Island, where there isn't any GMO. It's being found basically over, in the aquifers as an input from sugar historically, and sugar hasn't been there for a long time. So the Department of Health is going to gather more data. We're doing a document search now, and we'll be doing some environmental sampling to at least try and get a handle on what kind of pesticide contamination there may be caused by current agricultural practices. Now, I could have gone on a lot longer, but thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer questions maybe after everybody makes a presentation.
No.
Oh, we're on them now? Okay, well, thank you. You had questions? Sure.
Given your perspective on wetlands and waste disposal, what's the department's position on smaller scale sewage treatment, especially with the new membranes that have come on the market, neighborhood scale or even household scale treatment? I know you don't have rules for it yet, but are you moving in that direction?
Well, we've got lots of rules. I think the direction we're going generally, which is contrary to the past direction, which was concentrated, centralized wastewater treatment, I think it makes a lot more sense on a smaller scale, where appropriate, and it's all geologically based as to where it's appropriate, to do smaller scale wastewater treatment and recycling units. So the example I like to use, which I'd love to see happen, if we can get the county to do it, it doesn't make a lot of sense in Honolulu, which is our biggest wastewater treatment plant, to take all this wastewater from all the neighborhoods, from Diamond Head to Aiea, and pump it and force main it all the way out to Sand Island, where it has a lot of salt water intrusion, and then treat it and then put it out to the ocean. If we can, for example, interrupt the Manoa sewage trunk line right there at the golf course and the zoo, and if we can resource some of that water through a membrane bioreactor, any of these new technologies, we can skim off the nice clean water before it gets saltwater intrusion and use that as an irrigation source, getting free water or, not potable water on as irrigation and reducing the load at Sand Island treatment plant. So those are the kinds of things, as I said, that we want to fund. We're going to the counties and saying, do this, we got money. Right?
What is the response of the counties?
Counties are picking up. I think some counties have a lot of experience already and have been promoting wastewater reuse. I tell you, it's no secret, I tell my friends at Earth Justice all this. I mean, you're suing me now, or suing EPA, or suing the county now because of a wastewater thing. As soon as we clean up this water and we put it on land, you're going to be suing us for pharmaceuticals in people's neighborhoods. Right? We're not taking the pharmaceuticals out yet, right? So that's a whole other bit of science that we got to figure out. What is the impact of infiltration of pharmaceuticals? Are they kept in the soil? Are they uptaken into plants? All that stuff needs to be done. It's never so simple.
I guess the question that seems to always come up is the counties being worried about the loss of economy of scale if more and more private systems were to come on board. And so I guess I was wondering if they had responded to any of that.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap, and that's why I say it's geographically based or geologically based, because it certainly helps if you have gravity bring in your water instead of you have to pump it. It depends if you have a source or a demand for reclaimed water within that abattoir, for example. So it's bit by bit. We have to take it one bit at a time. Yes, sir.
Aaron, I just wanted to acknowledge the positive role of the Department of Health in establishing and your role personally in helping to establish a regulatory network for the enteric bacteria and the microbial monitoring that's required in order to establish mollusk production, reestablish mollusk production in the state. Again, it's a small but positive aspect of our food security, and it would not be taking place without your personal and protracted support. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. I'm not sure what I did, but I'll take full credit for it. I'll give credit to my staff. Some of them are in the room here. And we might as well give credit to EPA in the room too, because this is where we get our money from. Can I out you, Nancy? Can I? No, okay. Nancy's not here. Never mind. Yes, sir.
Earlier you mentioned about there are more than 100 streams on this island.
Well, okay, 100 on this island. More than 300 statewide. Yeah.
I cut on that. So for those 100 over plus streams, eventually require TMDL. So what is the state's strategy to deal with these issues? Because as I know, the TMDL, so far we finished less than 10. So the progress we're making, it takes many years.
It's job security for my grandson in the department. So basically, very simply, how the law works is anytime we have to assess which streams are impaired. And if we find them impaired, we are supposed to do a total maximum daily load assessment to see how to fix that impairment. The reality is, if we test a stream, we're going to find an impairment. Virtually every stream, any water body that touches humanity, in my experience, is going to be impaired for something. You'll find a few pristine streams, maybe north coast of Molokai, maybe Napali Coast, where they don't go through ag land or an urban area. But as soon as a stream goes through an ag land or in some cases a degraded conservation area or an urban area, there's going to be an impairment for something, and a plan needs to be put together to fix it. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. This is a huge task statewide. As you know, the islands are like pie slices, and there's a stream on every slice cut, and there's hundreds of these things. And so the only strategy we can employ is taking it watershed by watershed. We find the most impaired watersheds. We do a watershed study to see what can be done in that watershed, and then we free up some of the money we have for projects to improve the water quality and reduce the pollutant runoff in that area. So wedge by wedge, watershed by watershed, over the next 100 years we'll get it done. I think I'm running out of time, but one last question.
The other side of that is looking at the water quality standards. there efforts underway within the Department of Health to reevaluate the standards?
And make them stricter?
Or perhaps the other way around, maybe they are too strict, and that's why we're violating them all.
You know, it's a good point. One way of illustrating that is how strict our nitrogen standards are. You know, there are technical things that we obviously need to work for or work through. We can't be going backwards. EPA doesn't like us to make things, you know, less strict. Okay, so we have where we are now. But for example, our nitrogen standards in the ocean are stricter than the nitrogen standards in your drinking water. So that's a way of saying if you take your drinking water and you put a hose on your backyard bib and you put it in the stream, I can fine you $25,000 a day because that water that's drinkable, it might have more nitrogen than the standards allow. And it's good to have strict standards. You just got to know how to live with them. Okay, thank you all very much. I'll be around.
Actually, we have the room until 4:30, so we can have another session for questions after the last speaker. Are you going to say that?
Yeah, well, I'm stuck with him whenever he needs it. All right.
Well, I don't have the rhetorical skills as Gary, so I need slides, which is worth 1,000 words. And my name is Roy Hardy. I work for the Commission on Water Resource Management. I'm the groundwater program manager at the Water Commission. And whereas the Department of Health is kind of the quality arm of water management in the state, the Commission is more of the quantity arm. And our slogan, if you can read at the top, is Kahuvai Pono, which is the trustee who oversees the rightful sharing of water for obvious reasons. It's a limited supply, even from just the quantity standpoint. And every island is different. Every island has its issues. Just a little background, context before I get into some of the hot issues before the Water Commission, is that we have the authority to exist in the Constitution of the state. And in 1987, the legislature passed the Water Code, which amongst many things in defining our planning and regulatory authorities, we're setting out the goals of maximizing beneficial use of our waters and also protecting our waters. And the simplest way to look at this is a balance between protecting the public trust and balancing that against the uses of water from that trust in a reasonable and beneficial way. Public trust uses, there are 4 of them, and these have been determined through Supreme Court authority. Maintenance of water in its natural water state, which is obvious. Yeah, whatever's in the ground, how much can we take on a sustained basis? What are in streams, we call in stream flow standards, you can take on a sustained basis. Domestic use, you and I, we have a right to that water. Traditional and customary rights, Native Hawaiian pertinent rights is a hot issue before the Commission right now. Falls in that category. And last but not least is Department of Hawaiian homeland reservations, which exist in management areas. The reasonable beneficial side of that scale is, well, you got to have a purpose when you're using that water, and it's got to be a justified quantity. For example, domestic, we have a right to it, but I really don't have a right to use more than I really need. Okay, so it has to be efficient, that kind of thing. Practical alternatives. Gary brought up a nice way to describe wastewater as water which is wasted. Well, that has to fold into the equation here under alternatives. It is an alternative source of water, which we prefer that be used before you start taking from the public trust side of the equation of the quantity. It has to be consistent with public interest and also consistent with land use decisions. These are the decision makers on the Commission. There's 7 of them. With the chairperson, William Isla of DLNR, serving as the chairperson of the commission. Loretta Fuddy, Gary's boss at DOH, so you get that quantity-quality balance there. And then we have 5 more who are supposed to represent the counties. Oahu is Bill Balfour. And then for the Big Island, you have Kamana Beamer, Milton Pavao, and then for the county of Maui is Ted Yamamura on the right, and Jonathan Starr on the left there. What's interesting is that the 2 recent Big Island guys came in July, and they just substituted Maui commissioner, so it was really heavily weighted for Maui County as a commission. And there's reason for that because there are big issues on Maui. And I'll get to that real quick. There's a staff of 22. It's backwards. I'm in this branch, the groundwater branch, but there's also the survey, planning, and stream protection and management, which is the surface water side of things. And basically our mission statement is to protect and sustain the public trust resources. And we do this through planning and all those branches, the planning, regulatory framework, and also, probably the most important in my opinion is the best available data and analysis, because we want to give the commissioners and the public as much information as possible, the best information. So if we can boil it down to what we do, basically is data collection, again, to help quantify and the water availability. And so we do a number of studies and research with USGS and others to address that. And also, last and not the least, is ensuring reasonable beneficial use to protect the public trust. So in a nutshell, we're kind of like the water court. And these are the basic tasks that we do. Now, I know there's 15 minutes I could just spend talking about climate change. But there are other things, and I think there'll probably be more exemplary of what we do and the things that we're doing right now. Certainly these are the hot items before the commission. So I'm going to skip over climate change because I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of the situation. Temperatures going up, rainfall going down, stream flow going down, and it touches all of our programs. So, but we are aware of it, and it's going to be in our water resource protection plan, which is due out the end of next, in the summer. So what I'm going to do, oops. Oh, it's this. I'm going to skip over that and go straight into the other points, starting with Conan, Conan development pressures. This particular, the west side of Conan, in Keauhou, this is where there's a lot of urban development. All this land has been, it's a high growth area. The problem is that this red area here is the national park, Kaloko Honokohau, which was established in 1978. And really not the park is the problem, but the problem is that much of the area around it, which has been urbanized, was already urban prior to the existence of the park. Well, now you have a park which has public trust things such as fish ponds, over 185 ancholine ponds, and endangered species which need to be protected now. And they're competing directly with the land uses which have been approved. So, that's a very hot topic before the commission right now. Just so that you understand how things have changed. In 1978, when the park came into existence, there's about 3 million gallons per day used from this area. Back in 2005, and it's around here still, it more than quadrupled to 12. Okay, so water use, it's a growing area. And there's been talk of designating that as a water management area. What does that mean? Well, the water management area, there's only areas on Oahu, Molokai, and on the island of Maui, which also has surface water, there's recently, and there's still an issue that only exists here. And this is where you have to justify that reasonable and beneficial use. You have to get a permit that shows you're using it efficiently. There's alternatives that you've exhausted before you use from the resource, so forth. Well, that's some of the talk about going for Kona. These are some of the criteria for designation. You really have to only pay attention to groundwater and that's what's being talked about as far as being designated. When the use reaches 90% of the sustainable yield, well, part of the planning process with the commission, the Hawaii Water Use and Development Plan, developed by the County of Hawaii, they estimate, based on the zoning, that the demand by 2025 would be 18. The sustainable yield in this area is estimated about 38 million gallons per day. That's about half of the it's a little bit more than, about 50% of the way to sustainable yield, so we're not going to meet that criteria. But one of the things that is allowed in this number is that about half, more than half, of the recharge that goes into making this number is allowed to go out to the ocean anyway. Okay, So we're really more like at a quarter of what the natural recharge, the best estimates we have so far. The USGS updated the recharge in 2011, and the recharge for the area went up by 77. That makes this number somewhat conservative. However, we do know that rainfall has gone down. John Maluka came out in 2012 with something revised. And this year he's also finishing up on evapotranspiration, both of which will probably lower this recharge estimate. Whether it lowers it so that we start going below this, I don't know, probably not. But those are the types of changes in the analysis that we do. We do know that one other thing I want to point out is that, I know it's difficult to see, but one of the other items is that this blue line here is the demarcation between high-level water and basal water. And that's another scientific curiosity, or it's important in this area because there's a lot of water in that high-level area, so it seems, and not so much in the basal. Also, we've discovered fresh water below the saltwater lens in that area. Well, the salt water which underlies the brackish lens. So you got fresh, brackish, over salt, and then now we got fresh water again, found in Hilo as well. Kind of changes our conceptualization of the area. So we're doing some things. We're updating the recharge, as I mentioned, with the new rainfall and ET. The USGS is doing a 3D numerical model, but they're also doing not getting used to this. The isotope study for this connection between the high level and the basal, and whether it's also connected to that underlying fresh water. And there's a number of working groups that we work with, and we also are expanding our data collection in the area. We're resurrecting wells that have been lying idle for a number of years, and we're getting onto that. Moving on to Maui, Nawaiʻeha. For sure you may have heard of this. Long history, I won't go into it other than it started back in 2001, and the commission actually made its decision in order in 2010. This is a surface water in-stream flow standard availability question. I'm going to jump here to explain this a little bit to you. Whereas sustainable yields, you're looking at a water budget, some percentage of that recharge is then estimated as a sustainable yield. That would only be this box here for in-stream flow standards, which is the hydrology. In-stream flow standards, there's 10 more boxes and criteria that you got to consider, each with a number of things under it. And the big item for Nawaiʻeha is this Hawaiian water rights, specifically our pertinent water rights. We don't have rules for them, but it got the decision of the commission back in 2010 was remanded back in 2012 for that very reason, amongst others. But that's the biggie. You need to look at the traditional customary things, pertinent rights being the one. So that's what we're dealing with. We've reappointed hearings officer Miyuki to finalize this case and address those issues. Just a little bit on the decision and order. The two main rivers, Waihehi and Waiʻehu, we're having where you have to restore flows at specific points in the stream, and usually they're below the diversions for ease of access and measurement. But there was restoration to the streams. This here is a schematic of all the users that come off of the stream, and this particular area is really complicated with the four main streams, four main ditches, and they're all interconnected. Who's using what and how the water moves. It's very hard to define who's using what from where. Not to mention the pertinent rights. We have over 125 applications for existing use in this management area, 95 of which were for pertinent rights. So they need to be addressed. And we went out, completed the investigations, came up with schematics, who's who, where their water comes from. And basically, what we're doing is we're going into a contested case mode. It's been remanded, but part of it is this pertinent rights was outside of the IFS, so that's being pulled in now. And also the surface water use permits. It was an area that is designated. People need to justify their use. And all of this is being combined together under the IFS. Okay, moving on to East Maui. Similar, more streams were considered, 27 petitions, of which 7 were addressed by the commission. U.S. Geological Survey helped us with the water analysis to determine base flows and so forth, which was actually pretty tough because there wasn't a lot of data on many of these. But be that as it may, it was the best information available. The commission came up with this decision, and as an example, various gauges, the ditch, Kolau ditch, and the commission set this point right below a point there, a gauge to measure water should be flowing at that minimum amount all the time, at least that amount. So that's an example of one of the streams. And in 2010, the commission approved it. There was a request for a contested case hearing on this, and the commission basically said, no need. The Intermediate Court of Appeals came back and said, no, people do get a chance to go to a contested case here. So that's where we are today with East Maui. So it's going back to contested case mode. In July, the commission delegated authority to the chairperson to hire a new hearings officer for this, to look at all those boxes, weigh everything in a contested case. So moving on to a groundwater source. These all, one thing I want to mention, all these have been somewhat connected to surface water, or surface water 100%. Kukui Molokai is on, obviously, Molokai. It has a longer history. Molokai was designated back in 1992. The commission actually made their decision on this particular use from this particular well, which is basically Molokai properties. They had the golf course out in the west end, a number of residents they served out there, and most of what they have on Molokai Ranch is land. What happened was that they were late in filing their application. You have 1 year to file for the existing use. They actually did file something that was not quite complete, and they got the missing pieces in just after the deadline. And the Supreme Court in 2007 said, too bad, too late, vacated it. So we asked Molokai Ranch, okay, reapply. That's what Mom said, the Supreme Court said. What they did was they said, we give up because they don't have the water use permit. I think they had lost out on some of their